First up is Bonnie, and I think this is a good start. Um, I think it's thin when looked at from the side. I sent something separately saying that if you search for Smoking Spaceman Toy Robot, you can get a lot of images of this. And looking at this one, or maybe, yeah, there, he's probably about as thick or nearly as thick on the side as, he is wide in the front. So I think much thicker there. And pretty wide in the legs. Um, and here's another one. You can see a little bit of the side of this thing. So, and I know I didn't provide that originally, so you know it's fine that you didn't have it. But now that we do, the head is pretty much a cube. I would say the body is pretty very nearly a cube, maybe a little bit wider than it is deep. And there's variations among these too, as well, but I think in general that's the case. But yeah, really that looks too thin. The feet are looking kind of a little thick, but once they're all rounded, that might work out anyway. So yeah, it's a good start. This is clearly much too thin, so that's going to be cube shaped as well. So yeah, just a few proportions thing, but clearly the purpose of this is just kind of to make sure that everybody's able to get around the Maya interface and work with primitives and get things moved around, so we're all at the same kind of base level. So you've definitely achieved that. This is Herminia, and yeah, this is looking good. I might change the background color a little bit to make this pop out more. Alt B will cycle you through those. You can also do Control Spacebar to fill up the screen with this. So yeah, I think it's nice that you've gone above and beyond. I think with something like this, why does that look so faceted compared to that? Yeah, it's just you have a lot less edges. So I would, I'd probably just duplicate one of these cylinders and use it there. Probably the easiest. And yeah, it looks like you've gone beyond the scope of the assignment. It's always nice when people try to push things forward. You may make some changes or adjustments when you see, the way some of these things were done in the next. I think the feet should extend over the back some and then also be thicker. And also, while they are rounded on the top, they're not rounded on the bottom. So look for some of those details, and you'll be seeing all that kind of stuff in the next module anyways. But yeah, overall, good work, and it's good that you pushed forward. This is Justin, and yeah, it's got all the basics. It looks good. Once again, as I mentioned in a previous one, look at the thickness of the head and the top. The head's gonna. Each of these shapes is pretty much a cube that is kind of equal length on each side. Maybe a little wider in the front than depth, but pretty close to a cube. I mentioned separately that if you search for Smoking Spaceman Toy Robot, you'll get lots of different views on, some of them are slightly different versions of these, but they're all pretty close. And some of them you can see more kind of a side view and get an idea of what the depth might be like. So, so yeah, that's the big thing, is to make those thicker. But other than that, it looks like you've got all the basics kind of working out. So that's good. Next up is Shauna, and yeah, like a lot of these other ones, I would say it's too thin from the side. So I would go thicker on that. And other than that, looks good. You mentioned, can this be one piece? And I suppose it could. I think my instinct would happen to be two separate pieces, but well, partly because then if you detail one side, then you can then mirror it over to the other side, which is probably is what we're going to do eventually with all this. So you're actually going to probably delete off everything on this side. So I guess in that case I would say no, it does make more sense to just have the one sort of ear piece and then detail that and then mirror it over. Yeah, and again, thicker in depth, and yeah, on that it's looking good. Next up is Brianna, and yeah, there's something a little short and squat looking about this one. So I might kind of double check the proportions on it, and then like many of the other ones, add some depth to the body and the head and this thing on top, so that each of these pieces is more or less a cube. Has some depth. But yeah, other than that, you've got the basics in there. So maybe a little thicker on the feet, because once we round them, they're going to look even thinner when we round the top. So those are probably going to get thinner. And yeah, there's something a little short and squat looking about it. So kind of just double check those proportions. This is Jersey, and yeah, this is looking good. I think there's maybe this is, I've been saying that they're all kind of cube shaped, so I think probably more the same, closer to the same width as it is wide. And I feel like there's not enough space here. I think this is actually going to be bigger like that, giving this a little bit more room. And then I think that these are maybe going to be a little bit longer too. So as I mentioned in a separate post, if you search for Smoking Spaceman, oops, I didn't mean to do that, Smoking Spaceman Toy Robot, it'll give you a lot of different views of that robot or a very similar one. But yeah, you're getting all the basics, and you even went, we'll do this a little bit differently than you did that, but that's okay that you kind of moved ahead on some of those pieces. So yeah, looking good. This is Elena, and there's definitely some proportions issues. The arms pieces look much too small compared to the body. Also, this is going to be thicker here. You can still have it line up with that. Well, and then all these would have to move correspondingly back to the center. And we'll do this one a little bit differently, as you'll see in the next module. And again, the head's probably going to be thicker, more kind of cube shaped. And look out for stuff like this. I don't think it's oval shaped. I think it's going to be, just a perfect circle here. So, whatever it is in one direction, like it should be in the other. So if it's 0.25 in one, 0.25 in the other, so it's just perfectly round. And then same with this one. Which one is the, so yes, Z and X should be the same, so let's say they're both, I don't know, 0.1. So I would avoid elongating like stuff like that and just keep it geometrically the same. Again here, and again we'll do that with a cube, and then we'll adjust it in the next module, so you'll see that. It's nice that you've gone beyond, and again this will be done differently. This won't be a cylinder. We'll start with a cube for the feet, as was done in the module. So yeah, a few issues on this one, mainly having to do with proportions. If you look at some reference I mentioned separately, if you do Smoking Spaceman toy robot, you can get a lot of different points of view, and you can see kind of how thick it is and sort of the size of the arm from another angle. Just you can see from a few different angles here and get a sense of the scale of that. I know these are all slightly different from each other, but they're all pretty close. So yeah, you'll fix the proportions of the body, the head. We'll do this thing on top of the head differently, and do the feet differently as we move forward. Next up is George, and before we look at the Miocene, I just wanted to mention to look at the file name. Each of these assignments should say what the file naming convention should be. So in this case, last name, first name, and assignment number. You might imagine that if I got, a class full of files called Robot or Robot 2 or something like that, it'd be really confusing to figure out whose is which. So it's really important to have your name on there. So I think they all have the naming convention, but if I'm ever missing the naming convention, just do at least something like that, or that includes your name, so it's and the assignment number, and that way it's always important, by the way, for everybody to just check just check the description here and the submission directions carefully, because sometimes they change, or it might not be the obvious thing that you have to turn in. So take a close look at those. But yeah, let's take a look at the my. And yeah, this is pretty straightforward. Similar to many other ones, where again I think the too thin in this direction, so all of these things are going to sort of scale out to where they're more like a cube. Also, I think these are going to be bigger as well, as I've mentioned on several other of these critiques. That if you search for smoking spaceman toy robot in Google, you can get loads of images of this to see the proportions a little bit better. But yeah, you've got all the basics in there. Maybe the arm's a bit small. Looks like you could scale up some of these, thicken them a little bit. But yeah, just check your proportions and keep going. Next up is Henri, and let me know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Yeah, before I open this, if you'll notice, you've named it Robot Basic Shapes 3. If you look at the description, there'll be submission directions, and they should all have a naming convention here where it includes your name and the assignment number, and pretty much all of them should be include the name and the assignment number, because otherwise you can imagine if I got a whole folder full of things called robot basic shape or something like that, it'd be very confusing to know whose is which. Let's take a look at the my. Okay, this is looking good. I like that you've kind of gone to a next level and added this seam here, and it looks also very kind of accurately and carefully placed, so good work on that. It's nice to see when people go to the next level, and you've got some good proportions here. So also these kind of little doors you've done, although actually I think they kind of wrap around the side if you want to really be accurate. Maybe in the next module you want to do that. So yeah, good work. Next up is Alec Green, and yeah, I think this looks, you've got a lot of the basics, but I think these are going to be cylinders. As I mentioned on a number of others, these will be much thicker, it'll be much deeper in this direction. These are going to start out as cubes, and you did start out as a cube, but then you kind of rounded them this way. So you might want to just swap these out for new ones when you'll see how to do this in the next module. For these cylinders, I just do Control Spacebar to get my interface back. Control Polygon Primitives. Oops, not sphere. Cylinder. The default cylinder you see has a lot more edges than the ones that you use. So I think what does this have? If we look here, this has 20 around the axis, and yours has, one way to check is if I select these edges along the edge there. I just right mouse click and said edge, and then did a marquee select through the center here. And then if I go display, heads up display, and then poly count, and I can see edges. Why does it say 50? Oh, what, I forget what that column is, but anyways, it's 10. So, and then this object has, as we saw here, 20. So it's double the number, and then that gives it that real faceted look, whereas this looks nice and smooth and round, which is more like the artwork. So yeah, fix the proportions this way. Use the smoother cylinders. We'll replace these with cubes, and then we'll use beveled around the top, as you'll see. Yeah, and kind of get all those stickers, cylinders here, and but anyway, you can just follow the videos in the next module for all those other details. But definitely use the more detailed cylinders and get the proportions right.